Ready? 1, 2, 3. But Premier sings it for us. Organized Sound Podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Mahib Balday, and I'm joined by some very special guests today. The band, the new Rockwells, is here. Introduce yourself, guys.
I'm Ben. Should I say what I play? I play keys, saxophone, and I sing.
I'm Marty. I play guitar and sing and play some harmonica.
Well, I'm very glad to have you today.
Sometimes I play the fool.
Turn on your, turn on A, 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 turn on your, turn on your.
Oh. He stepped on my foot when he said that. All right. So, you guys are in a very celebratory place. The new album is out, Old Familiar Way, on all streaming platforms. What's the mood right now?
The mood is good. You know, in this business that we're in of making our own songs and self-releasing records and then trying to get shows, I feel like there's reaping years and there's sowing years. And this has been a sowing year for us, putting in a lot of time to make the album, a lot of our resources, and now it's the fun part. We get to reap the benefits of that, share the music, play some shows, have a good time.
I tell you about a girl I've been seeing for a while. Makes me hot with a frown or a smile. She's tough and stuff, a real renegade. Wearing short shorts are called a fire brigade. She's wicked hot, burns like a flame. Whoa, wicked hot, sends me home in shame. She is wicked hot, like the desert in the day. Yeah. She is wicked hot, makes me pray for the rain.
Yeah, this is the best part. This is why we do it. When we now we've got the album out. We've all these shows lined up, and we played a bunch, and it was a lot of hard work getting there. And the hard work is fun too, but this is really where we get to do what started it all off in the first place.
All right. Okay. So, I want to talk a little bit about how you guys started the band. So, I'll start with you, Ben. Go a little bit into your musical background and then leading into joining the new Rockwells.
Sure. How far back do you want me to go?
As far as you,
on
as far as
my
it goes,
second
man.
birthday,
Yes.
I let's see. So growing
Hey,
up,
man.
I was born
you
in
gotta,
the year.
you gotta start early.
I grew up playing classical piano from like a really young age. Did that for years. Lots of nocturnes and sonatas and that whole thing. Picked up clarinet. You had to pick an instrument in 4th grade, so I picked clarinet. I actually wanted to play trumpet, but the band leader, I've never told you this, he just looked at me and he was like, "No, clarinet." I've never known what that meant, but.
And you just took it.
And so I was like, fine,
Took it
clarinet,
and
sure,
ran.
why not?
Bandleader was a big Squidward fan and made the association.
I guess so, yeah. So, then did that. And then high school, I started getting more interested in jazz. My dad plays jazz piano, and I was like, I want to do that. So I stopped classical lessons, started taking jazz lessons, and I switched to saxophone at the same time. I was still playing clarinet in the orchestra. So switched more to jazz, joined my first ever band, started playing out 10th, 11th grade.
Okay, first ever band. Oh, that's exactly what I was going to ask. 10th, 11th grade.
Yeah,
Nice.
the former Kings, learned a lot from that. That group was a lot of fun.
The former group, the former
the
Kings.
former group, the former Kings, true. And then in college, I just kind of hit the jazz and the playing in bands a lot harder. So I was taking lessons the whole time for jazz piano, playing in a funk rock group, I guess, for lack of a better genre there. A lot of different stuff, a lot of parties in college, playing that kind of stuff, a lot of bars in the Pioneer Valley. And then I met Marty. When did I first? Was it my senior year, I guess?
Probably.
My senior year. Because
junior year.
Marty had been playing at this open mic that I played a lot, and I'd been playing there for years. And I saw him play, and I was like, I want to play with that guy. And then it turned out we had mutual friends, and
this was at Amherst College.
this is at Amherst
Did we say
College,
that?
yeah, at Marsh Coffee House,
Yeah.
the famed Marsh Coffee House where it all began.
Yes, we were lucky.
Yeah, and now that's since I've kind of worn a lot of hats. I score films, and I play in this group, and I'm in a folk really folksy rock harmony thing in Brooklyn, and yeah, playing this kind of fun music was really, the foot tapping music was really what got it started for me in high school and then in college, and now with the new Rockwells. And a lot of it kind of funnels into that. The jazz kind of comes into it a lot, and yeah, it's kind of a freewheeling answer there.
Sweet. That's what I was looking for. Marty, we're on to you in terms of musical background.
Where do we start, Mahib? Where do we start, my friend?
Because there was a new Rockwells before.
There was a new Rockwells before.
All right.
Well, let's go.
Let's start at the
Let's go
beginning.
farther
New
back,
Rockwells.
shouldn't we?
Back.
So
Yes.
let's
All right,
let's
full
clear the
disclosure.
air here.
Marty
Let's
and
clear the
I
air.
have been friends for a very long time.
I think I met you in
What?
first grade. I'm so sorry to have to break it to you so
Oh
publicly.
my God.
So you and I have been playing music actually for a long time together. I started playing guitar about 11 years old, I think, and initially inspired by our music teacher, Mr. Ansatelli, and just really wanted to learn the guitar and play classic rock, basically. And so all throughout high school, we did music projects where pretty much any class project we would turn into a video with an original song that you and I would do, culminating in Ebony and Ivory, which
Oh
was
my God.
really good for the senior talent show.
Maybe I'll insert that clip here.
Yeah, I'll get that to you.
That's a maybe.
And yeah, in college, was starting to write original music. I was briefly in a folk rap comedy duo called the New Rockwells.
As you
Yeah,
do.
and that was very much like a Flight of the Conchords
Yep.
type, like very local comedy,
Hyper local.
like the floor of a building local.
The floor of a building local. Like let's take these 20 people and make fun of them in an obscene folksy rap.
Oh, I'm sure they love
But
that.
We did pretty well.
you had an audience. It spoke directly
Those 20
to them.
people, then you'd have to
The
find
music
20
really
new
spoke to
people to
them.
come to the next show.
Yeah.
You'd make fun of them. And so that was a couple of shows that it lasted for, but I still like the name. And actually, my first ever band was with you. We were, and I voted against this name. I'm on the record right now. I voted against it. We were the Hindenburg Boys.
Oh,
You know
that's-
just about how well that went. We knew one song. It was Mahib and I and our friend Dan Fry
Yes. Who
Dan
I saw
Fry-
recently.
was shredding it up on bass,
Slopping that bass. line.
slapping the bass. I was on guitar, electric guitar, and Mahib was our singer. We knew one song. It was Back in Black.
AC/DC.
So to this day, I still
right.
think of, Mahib, Back in Black. I hit the sack. Been too long. Not glad to be back. And it was, we played like 3 shows. They were all in Dan Fry's bedroom,
Can we get
Yeah.
a
and the
preview?
audience was 0.
1, 2, 3.
Oh man.
Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum.
I was so not serious about it. It's mind-boggling.
It was the Hindenburg. I wanted to be called Weapons of Mass Seduction.
Which you later.
But we
kinda
were in.
made your own
I
beat
did.
tape.
I did make a little bit of
under
a beat
that
tape
name.
under that name. But we were in 7th grade, and that was vetoed apparently.
For 7th grade, that's not bad.
But yeah, started writing my own songs. They were getting more and more serious. I was working on my songwriting. Started to play Marsh Coffee House. Saw Ben played the song Vienna by Billy Joel. Absolutely crushed it, and was just like, wow, that guy's really great. I want to try and play with him. I was making my own album at the time, my solo album, Marty Boyle, and you can find it. It's on Spotify. It's streaming everywhere. And I wanted to do some songs with more lush instrumentation than just me and a guitar. So I brought in Ben to play piano, play some sax. I brought in our friend Ian, and he was actually with the New Rockwells for a little while on drums with us, and
Anderson
it felt
Gray.
good. Yeah, Anderson Gray was on it with
too,
us
yeah,
on
fiddle.
fiddle. And that just sort of blossomed. It was like, this feels good. We should keep doing this. And so
And
was
here
born
we are.
the resurgence of the
2
New
albums
Rockwells.
later.
Two
Very
albums
nice,
later.
Very nice. So I think I want to quickly just talk about your musical inspirations right before jumping into specific songs on this new album.
Ben?
Let's see. It kind of runs the gauntlet. Growing up, my parents were really into classic rock, so and like piano-oriented classic rock too. But so like a lot of Billy Joel, Elton John, and that's kind of how I really first learned to play those songs. Was like emulating those recordings, and Beatles, of course. And then things kind of changed a little bit. I started getting more into funk, like Tower of Power, Maceo Parker, and that was more in college. But the piano rock has always kind of been classic, and then jazz piano as well, especially like Chick Corea. I guess those are the biggest ones coming to mind right now. Yeah. I'll see if I think of any others
That's plenty.
that pop up there.
I think you hit the nail on the head too. We were recently described as eclectic rock, and I started to get you with that
Who
because
said
I'm like,
that?
Yeah.
that was in that latest review,
Oh
and was like, well,
Eclectic
eclectic
rock.
kind of means, I guess it means two things, right? It means like varied style, but also could mean like a little avant-garde. But if you take it the varied style way, I think Ben hits it on the head because he definitely has like the jazz influence side.
Herbie
Herbie
Hancock. was big, too.
Hancock. And I like that stuff too. I think we sort of center on that classic rock, classic folk. That's what I'm all about. John
Unfolds.
Prine, Steve
Sorry, I'm just gonna
Goodman,
keep
the
throwing it out there.
Beatles, Rolling Stones, Jim Croce.
James Taylor, a little bit.
Yeah, okay, James Taylor.
Why not?
Yeah, local guy. So we sort of center on that, and then I also tend towards like harder rock and blues. And in the course of a day, I feel like I listen to just like a very weird mix of music.
I just listened to Green Light by Lord on repeat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
There's nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period. There was
that period.
There was like
Okay.
there was
It's
like
hard
there
to-
were-
it's
there were
hard
a
to
couple
tease out
weeks.
the sarcasm
There were a couple
in
weeks.
this.
At the end of the year, when we share our Spotify like playlist things,
Oh, that was
someone's
embarrassing.
always a little more reluctant to share his.
Than others.
Yeah, Marty was like, we should post this. I was like,
It's a
ooh.
tradition now. We're doing it. I'm
I was
excited
like,
to see
I
what you've
wasn't
been listening
expecting.
to.
I mean, I think Love on Top.
Yeah.
I'm just
But
in my
that's
top
okay.
10 every year. Oh no, I'm proud of that one.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah.
How many
Yeah,
key
yeah, yeah.
changes? Come on.
Less proud of the Ariana Grande, but it's fine. No, she's
Right.
great. Her new album was actually pretty good.
Thank you. Next question.
So-
So I want to jump right into the album. Old Familiar Way, as we said, came out in October. The sequel, and quite a big step up from Live from Carnegie Hall. The first song on there is Dodge a Bullet.
Yeah.
Lot of like personal songwriting stories that sound like they tease of a larger story. Is there any larger story to the Dodge a Bullet?
Well, I think I try and keep, songwriting is in many ways like telling a lie. That's how I always look at it, is that you want to start with some thread of truth. And ideally, if it's, universal, even if it's really specific, sometimes that becomes really
Like an
universal.
experience, maybe.
Yeah, like a lived experience. And then at some point you take a left turn or a right turn. And I think, you can get really specific or you can keep it really general. I think that song's actually on the more specific side for us. I think of it more as, just sort of this broad homage to, unrequited love, young unrequited love. It's a song about, I did all these things to try and get your attention. You didn't give me the time of day. And now I look at where you are, and in this case, we say 25 with the ring on your finger, just like you hoped it would be. And it's sort of this reflection of, I was really sad that it didn't work out in the past, but I look at where you are now, and I think I dodged a bullet.
Right. Okay.
I think it's interesting though what you said about like, is there a larger story? And I think when we were writing the album, lyrically we weren't thinking like, oh, is there a larger story? Although we were kind of trying to approach that kind of cohesiveness musically. Although I think each song is kind of its own story, and then
Yeah.
together it kind of paints a larger picture.
I think
Even
there's
though if we
common
didn't have that
themes.
in mind, yeah.
And one of the things, too, is when you're writing a song like that, and you're keeping it kind of broad, you realize that any one moment you could take this right turn, when we're like, oh, well, maybe we should say this. And it's like, we go down that direction, the whole song is changing from, this idea that we currently have, and now we're going to go in this direction. And so you kind of have to weigh that. Like, are we going to go, is she going to fall off a bridge, and then we have to be, like, sad about it? How are we going to deal with this? Are we going to keep it right down the middle?
What did you do to this person?
Oh, man.
So the next song that I want to talk about, if I could, and now you kind of if I may, I could, is a song. There's a lot more back and forth, Ben, on this album. In particular, we have a lot more singing from you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how that comes together in the studio. There's a little more harmonizing on this one, and playing off of each other. So take us to that studio environment and how you guys craft these songs in there.
Sure. We for this album we took a completely different writing approach than we'd had in the past. In the past, it's kind of been we would come to each other with almost a completely realized song, and it was like, all right, cool. I've got the guitar down, I've got the chords, I've got the melody, I have everything, and now I need you to write a piano part, or vice versa. For this, it was a much more. That still happened to some degree, but there was less bringing to the table for many of the songs. So we had kind of writing workshops that were centered around gigs. So, for example, I think we did 3?
We did 3.
We'd have a gig in New York, on like a Friday or Saturday night, and then we spend the whole day working on songs and writing those songs and really getting into it and rearranging everything. And so for those
recording demos
for everything, yeah. So if I could, I had, when we first started working on it, I had a first verse, and I think I kind of knew maybe the feel of the chorus ish. We figured out the melody of the chorus, and then Marty. It was actually crazy. Normally our harmonies involve like some writing. Marty just busted out this harmony on like I think the first try, and I was like, okay, cool, that's the song right there.
Sounds
Great,
good.
done.
Right. It sounds very
Thank you.
good.
That's one on the record. And then, but like there's that kind of chord breakdown thing in the middle. That was totally new that day, and a lot of the songs kind of evolved in that way where we'd bring a kernel or a couple kernels to the table and then flesh it out together.
Yeah, a lot of times we'd have like one part of it done. So like the lyrics would be mostly done. So a lot of the songs I brought in, like Dodge the Bullet or Fool Myself, like the lyrics were mostly done. It's like, okay, let's go nitpick those. And then it's like, let's also figure out, should this be a bridge? Should it be a chorus? How are we going to build the music around what we have?
Yeah.
Or you start the other way where it's like, I have this cool lick. How do we work it in? So like the solo on Dodge the Bullet was this piano solo that Ben had for a while.
I've been sitting on it for like 4 years, and I tried putting it in like 8 songs, and none of them worked.
Whoa.
And then this, I almost forgot about it. Because I gave up. I was like, this is not going to fit in anything. And then we played the song, and we were like, we need something. The song was done, and we actually thought it was done.
Yeah,
and
it was just really short.
And then we would write these demos, listen to them a lot, and come back and write again. And we realized this is missing something. It needs something else. And I was like, oh, let's just stick this in there, and it actually worked. So
right key.
It worked.
Perfect. Serendipitous. A lot of things in the studio, it seems like, sometimes the answer just falls on you.
Depends
like,
how much whiskey's involved. But, yeah.
Is that what are the things that you have to go to the studio with, or like a ritual or anything
Coffee.
like that?
We have a bunch of traditions like that have come. Well, not
really?
like we didn't like set out and be like, oh, we need some traditions, but they just kind of happened over the
Right.
years.
Yes, like the signing of the session musician contracts. That's a beautiful tradition. I love that one. Really moves me.
I'm talking more about like the naked bonfire. Oh, really?
Oh.
Sorry, no, that's not a real thing. But like, so whenever Marty comes to New York, he always brings like a Western Mass amazing beer, like Treetop, or that's what they're called, right?
Treehouse.
Yeah. Shit. Treehouse.
Yeah.
Not,
It's the taste that matters.
Exactly.
He knows
or Heady
the
Topper
taste.
or whatever. And that's always really fun. And then we always, this isn't, I guess, part of the studio. That always comes out kind of like halfway through the day. And then we always go out drinking like that night of the writing session.
Yeah.
It's good to let it percolate,
Absolutely. I want to talk about the next song, I Fool Myself.
Okay.
Big song.
Yeah.
Big, lot of different instruments
Yeah.
beyond what two people
Yep.
handle.
So
and yeah, so talk
when
a
I
little
was
bit about that.
when I was writing the song, I was really into this blues musician Delbert McClinton, and Delbert is like a phenomenal harmonica player, and he's got this incredible voice, but it's like rhythm and blues, so it really kicks ass. A lot of electric guitars, horn section, just really rocks. And it was
I heard Ben's a horny guy.
he is a horny guy. That's the kind of song that I wanted to make. So we got it. There's 2 electric guitars on it, both of which I'm playing. There's Rhodes piano,
I forget if it's
organ,
yeah, and then we did a full horn section.
full horn section.
We we recorded it in. Actually, that song was recorded in 3 different places. Because I did some of the harmonies in my home studio. But then we also, I was finishing up my master's at NYU at the time, and there's a great studio there, Dolan Studio. And I put out a call for 4 horn players. We had trumpet, alto, tenor sax, and trombone. And I put out a call, vetted the guys, and got 4 just incredible players. Wrote up the parts, wrote the arrangements based on kind of what we talked about, and that listened to a lot of songs and a lot of artists that kind of had that feel we were going for. Tried to emulate that style as best as I could, and then we went into the studio, and this was after we recorded the 2 of us. So I had those musicians listening to the track and then playing all together over it, and we used that approach on a number of songs.
Anything
then
that has strings and horns, that's how we did it.
Yeah, and then we sent it back to Andrew at Ghost Tip Recording, and he folded it all together.
Nice. Now, did Andrew work on that first project at all?
No, so we actually went in a different direction in terms of our production. So we worked with Andrew Odell on this album from Ghost Hit Recordings in Holyoke, Mass.
Sweet.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. I did some solo demos with him and really enjoyed his space and had great equipment, and we had a good chemistry. So I was like, let's do this project.
Okay, and I think that's I want to just clarify something, because Ben's been mentioning New York. Ben, you live in New York, whereas Marty's out in Boston.
Long distance band.
What's that?
Long distance band.
LDB.
Yeah, right.
Nice. How is having a long distance band and keeping the relations and communication up?
We kind of got down to a science at this point.
Yeah, we've got it down pretty well. We should have I think there's a couple things that are important with any band.
Yeah.
And it's sort of magnified when it's long distance, but it's like you have to have your lanes that you stay in. So I definitely run more of the business, more of the trying to get gigs, social media postings, doing our accounting. Though Ben is eager to take that job over. And,
I share posts.
No,
Yeah.
I meant the accounting.
Oh, I'm really excited about the
Yeah.
accounting.
Yeah.
So I sort of do like the business side of it for us and, tour planning and prep. And Ben basically does the music side of it. So making sure, we have all the equipment and setup that we need, all the arrangements when we're writing new songs, coordinating with musicians when we bring in other people to play with us, making sure we have practice spaces when needed.
And it is helpful. I feel like having people in 2 different cities opened some gigging doors in those cities as well. We had your connection at this place and all the breweries that we've played at on Western Mass, and then in New York, I was able to make the initial contact at like Rockwood, for example, and
Yep.
those kind of places. And so I feel like we kind of have a foothold now in 2 distinct great music communities that
makes the
wouldn't have been
logistics easier,
possible
too.
otherwise. Yeah, I mean, he comes to New York, stays with me. I come to Boston, stay there. It's great.
Makes it easy.
Yep.
Okay. I like that because it's so much about traveling, making sure that this music isn't just in one place. The dynamic of just being a band in New York wouldn't be the same as just being a band in Boston.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you need that networking and that circulation. And you guys were also in DC for a little bit too.
Yeah, we've
where
kind
you
of turned
played
into a
shows
strength
and stuff
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's differences, that the scenes are very different. The Boston music scene is
describe
not the New York
those.
music scene. The New York music scene is not the Boston scene. Well, for one, the New York music scene is much bigger. The Boston music scene is very much relegated to, a dozen or so nightclubs. And no one has a necessarily huge, portfolio or profile. And New York is still, there's a lot of places you could play, but there's like maybe 5 nightclubs and music venues that like people have sort of agreed on are the big ones.
And that also cater to like up and coming artists.
Right. So I find it's actually harder for us to get traditional sort of gigs in Boston because the set times are usually shorter, and they're usually looking for a little more avant-garde music, a little more alternative music than what we do, which isn't to say that we couldn't play any of these spots, but it's usually not what I focus on in Boston, whereas in New York, playing a Rockwood or playing pianos is something we tend to focus on more in that space. So I think it's just playing towards the attitudes.
They come with different challenges too, though. One of the problems with New York I found is because you're just inundated with. There are so many places to go, so many things to see, and so many available concert options.
Opportunity.
It can be harder to get people out sometimes. Whereas in Boston, if we play a gig in Boston, you can bet that everyone we know in Boston's coming out.
Yeah.
Because it's more of an event. But if we're playing a gig in New York, I mean, now it's less of a problem.
Yeah.
I felt it was more of an issue when I just moved to New York and we were just starting to get gigs there. We played some empty rooms. And
But we
really
also
happen
played.
anymore.
That was at a time where we weren't playing a lot of like So Far Sounds gigs, which is what we do a lot now in New York, and it was gigs where we constantly needed to bring people out.
Yeah.
So if you only are doing 1 or 2 of those a year, you can pretty much pack the place, which also tends to be something we do. We like to play designated events, So Far Sound shows, which are these pop-up shows. I'm sure many of your viewers know about. But yeah, Boston and New York definitely have different feels, and part of it is just the sheer magnitude of New York compared to Boston.
Yeah.
You really can't compare the 2 cities.
Right. I definitely agree with that. I spent a lot of time in both and can attest to that. New York is very overwhelming. Like Boston has the downtown area with the tall buildings, but just it goes on and on and on forever in New York.
Did you feel the music scenes were like? How did you feel about the different music scenes? Because I know you're kind of.
I feel like I know significantly less about the Boston music scene, and that's something I want to kind of know more about. I'm familiar with like Middle East and stuff like that, and like that's about it. But like Marty talks a lot about the bar shows. I don't know as much about that, but I've definitely enjoyed concerts I've been to out there. So it's hard to say. But I wanted to talk about So Far Sounds, which you mentioned just a bit ago. I think for the viewers it would be good to describe exactly what that process is, because they're very specific in what they do.
Yeah.
And talk about if each of you had like a favorite show that you did with them, to kind of talk about that experience.
The story of how we kind of first found So Far is also a good way to explain what they are, I think.
Yep.
I just moved to New York, and a friend of mine was taking me to a So Far show. She's like, you're gonna love this. I'd never heard of it before. And it was in a clothing store after hours. And that's kind of what So Far is, although they've kind of really expanded in the past couple of years. But the venues range from after-hour stores to apartments. That's how it started. To actual venues. To we played a church once.
Yep.
I mean, all over the place. It's just different venues. And so we go in and we're sitting down. Everyone's sitting down, like kind of half on the floor. Some people are on benches in the back, and everyone is silent, listening to these 3 acts. And it's always 3 acts. And the idea is that it's really just about appreciating a live music experience without the distraction of, a full crowded bar, or a super like loud, enormous concert. And those can both be fun too. But this is really about going to a night of music, and usually the range is totally different. So that first one I went to, the first artist that went was a flute beatboxer singer, and it was so cool. And then the next one was a folk singer, and then the next guy was a rapper, I think. And it was a really eclectic show. And then I thought to myself, this would be a perfect way to get into the scene here. And just so happened that one of their booking people was there, so I got her name. It was Grace, and that was how we kicked that off. And then we wrote them, and now we kind of have a relationship with them. Favorite one I've played, that is. We've played so many, that's tough. I thought the most recent one we played was awesome. The one at that club in New York.
Oh yeah, Kinfolk
Yes,
94.
yeah. The other acts were just amazing. The audience was really, really into it. And you can just tell when the audience is like game for what it is. It is a lot. It's a long night, and it's and you're sitting there.
If you're sitting on the floor,
Yeah, and you got to be really engaged in the music. And they were present and amazing the whole night, and also the venue was really cool.
Yeah, I would say I've never seen acts there that I didn't think this person is really good or this band is really good. Sometimes I go, okay, it's not my style. It's not something I would actively go out and see, but also it's 25 minutes. So, and you're going to see 3 acts. So it really is pretty varied to the point where, okay, you don't like this act. That's one thing, but I've never seen anywhere where I was like, this really isn't of a certain level of quality. And there is an application process that I think we got in at a good time, because as I understand it, the application process has gotten a little harder.
Yeah,
Depends
I've
on
seen some
what
pretty
market you're in.
incredible acts there.
Yeah.
And really wide.
We even
range of
we
stuff.
were playing a show once. There was a group from Taiwan, and
They were so good.
They were playing all custom-made instruments that were essentially variants on like guitars and mandolins, but
string based.
different. And they sang not in English, and it was really sort of like ethereal and beautiful. A lot of good harmonies. The instruments were great. And, where else are you going to go where you see us play and also like this group from Taiwan who are not singing in English, and you can have an appreciation for both. And I feel like everyone did. That was a great
That was
band.
a good show too. Yeah.
That was a great show. I think my favorite was our first, which was in this old church in New York. And it's just this beautiful old marble
amazing acoustics.
church that I guess
That's cool.
sometimes has services now, but for the most part is a secular space.
It's weird to be playing
and-
with Jesus over your shoulder though.
It was a little weird, especially
like,
given
oh,
our Catholic school
hello.
background. It was kind of like, I do this want to do this cool like nightclub show, like playing a sneaker store, and here I am in a church. But the acoustics, because of
Sure.
how the space is built, the 1800s of no amplification, and we're not amplified. A lot of the shows are acoustic, for most of the shows. It was a really powerful experience, and I feel like the audience really,
It was cool.
really was giving it back to us, and it was just a really special experience. And was like, okay, this that we're doing now is like, this is worth doing. This is great.
Yeah, I was actually at that show.
You were?
And yeah, fan participation is a big part, and you kind of brought me back into the songs because Old Familiar Way, the title track, is very much kind of like the rockin'.
That's a party.
Let's Go.
Yeah.
I'm sure you close a lot of shows with that.
Yep.
Yeah, we do.
Including tonight if you stick around.
Correct. So talk about the reaction you've been getting to that song since you put it out. And
There's a reason it's always our last song. So it's one of the first songs that I brought to the band. I had this really prolific day when I was studying abroad in Copenhagen where I wrote like 4 or 5 different songs that we continue to play, like Forever and Today and Old Familiar Way, Where Are You Tonight. I had sort of this like great moment of clarity. I hadn't played guitar in like a summer, and these all just came out. And Old Familiar Way is just sort of this like slow burn, feel good groove of a song. And we, especially at a So Far show, which is a lot of what we play, you know, it's acoustic. We tend to be higher energy than some of the other acts. And you end with that, just banging on a guitar, you know, fiddling away on the piano like faster than the speed of sound. And it's just, it's how we end the show because it's a lot of fun. And it was, I really believe in, you know, if you're going to have an 8-track album, a 13-track album, a 26-track album, I don't care, you know, you should reward listeners throughout the way. So we really do think a lot about the order of the songs. We want you to listen to every song. We don't want you to lose you at track 7. So having track 8 be this absolute party, or having the final track, which in this case was track 8, be the party of the album, to me is a really fun send-off, and I hope leaves the listener wanting more.
I remember that one being so fun to record.
So much
because
fun.
we showed it to our bass and drummer session guys that were in for that, Jamie and Josh, and they're wonderful to play with. But that one, you know, they listened to it beforehand. Then we played it for them, and they were like, "Oh,
We get it.
yeah." And then they went right into it. I think that was one that took like one
or
maybe
2
2 takes.
Well, it was also the sort of thing where we did it, and we had this this sort of like stutter at the end where we're doing the final chorus, and we liked that, and we had sort of thought like, man, we should be cool if we got like a little trading between the drums and the guitar and the bass, and so we're like, oh, let's repeat that at the end, and it makes for this instrumental part before the final verse that is just such an absolute hoot and party, and isn't really the way you and I play it when we play it
no,
live.
it's different now.
But it's just so much fun.
It's a lot of fun, yeah.
and kept it on there. That's so interesting. Kind of goes back to that, like things just erupt from natural things that happen in the studio, and then it's a little different, and you keep it because it's like it's perfect and it's
when
in
we're back with
perfection.
those guys, it's like, okay, let's do our version. You know, let's do the album version.
And you can always switch it up. And I mean, that's what's really fun about being the band that you are on the road and performing all the time is like you get to just change things up whenever you feel like it, whenever it feels like things need a changing up.
There will be songs
on the
played at
fly.
tonight's show in a way that we have never played them before and will never play them again. And that's
Right.
true for every show we play.
Part of that is because there'll be songs tonight show that we haven't played in like a year.
Well, I want to talk about tonight's show, set up where we are, and what's going on.
Yeah, we're at the Student Prince in downtown Springfield. Bit of a homecoming show for us. We don't really play so much in Western Mass anymore. Really mostly focused in Boston and New York.
Right, you went to grade school and high school in Springfield, right, Marty?
And to UMass.
As
with
did I.
you.
Yep.
And Ben obviously went to Amherst College. And this is just a fun venue for us. I've been coming here my whole life, and in recent years they've made it into a music space, and so it's not a big stage, and it's
No,
cozy.
it's
It's cozy for the two of us, but it's just we get to come out and play 3.5 hours of music, which is pretty much everything we have, and then some. And it's just fun. We're gonna have a lot of friends and family here, and a lot of people who, you know, probably are just down here for a stein of beer and don't know what they're getting themselves into. And
Poor bastards.
by the time Old Familiar Way comes around, if everybody's, you know,
Loosen
side
up.
going, we're gonna have a good time.
I woke up today, had a pain in my head. Called in sick, spent the whole day in bed. Love me, baby, let me through the day. Oh yeah, will you come on, baby? Let me in that old familiar way.
are you excited for?
For tonight.
Yeah, tonight specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. It's this. We've played this place twice before, and it's always such a fun time. Yeah, I like the. It's kind of like kind of a homecoming for us. There are gonna be a lot of people we know here, and it's always fun playing for people you know. My dad is here. He's hopping on some tunes with us, and that's always fun. I'm excited about all of it. I've been looking forward to this for since we booked it. Really,
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a great time. I'm kind of looking forward to letting loose. I mean, the set is so long that we kind of can't really worry about. We're pulling out all the stops.
You
right?
can't overdo it.
Well, also we can't really worry about oh, is the hit on this? You can't get too specific. We can kind of barrel through, right? So,
Right.
and we've gotten to the
Yeah.
point we've been playing together so long. We're good at reading each other, and so there's kind of it's easy to improvise together and be loosey goosey.
There will be a song where I forget the chords, and
Oh,
that's
good.
okay.
This is good to know
Right,
ahead of
that's
time.
There'll be a song where you forget the chords, and it's like you're playing
And
50,
to
you're
the
playing
listener,
50 songs.
I
so
always say this to you guys, to the listener, when you're improvising and stuff like that, no one notices.
No, we're
like
fooling around.
you just make it happen.
yeah. So
I love it.
yeah, we're gonna just have fun with it, and I feel like that's what always comes through with us is we're feel good music. We're good time music. We have serious. We're serious about our songwriting and about our playing, but we never get so into being esoteric about it or
Right. So, and this has come up a couple times. Like, what's your genre?
Ugh.
And where
Eclectic
are
rock.
you at for
Eclectic
that?
folk.
No, not what did somebody else tell you your genre is?
I like to say we are neo folk blues.
Okay.
That's what I've taken on.
That works for me. Cool.
You're with it.
Because some songs were like
Comedy folk rap.
we do a little comedy too. I mean,
yeah, tequila.
tequila, yeah.
Tequila. Great
That's the name of a song.
And we just hit to so many fields, and I think that's part of what's fun about what we do, and I hope it makes it widely appealing to listeners. I think it does.
I mean, I just want people to have a good time. Like
Yeah.
when they come see the show, when they listen to the album, it's just I want them to enjoy it.
It's good time
Um,
music.
Yeah, I want them to hear the lyrics too, and I want them to appreciate the story like you did. But I want them to come away with a smile.
I think there's a little bit of that
Tap their foot a little.
in folk music where it's like, oh, you have to be serious and you have to really be pouring your heart out, and that's cool, and I'm all about that. And
Doesn't sound like it.
we definitely, I'm all about that. We definitely take our lyrics and our songwriting seriously, but I also think you don't have to sacrifice having a good time and having fun music
there's
for
such
that.
a balance.
And I think some people look down on that, especially in folk or what modern folk is like. It has to be very serious and
Right.
earnest.
It's like,
And-
what do I want when I go to a concert? I want to have a good time.
Yes.
Mainly.
Mainly.
Absolutely. Okay, there's a question that I have that I ask everybody.
Oh, gosh.
The music scene has been very changed by the advent of streaming and stuff like that, and I was a business student over at UMass, so I always ask, what are the new rules, if you will, of music marketing? So
Yeah.
for this, you can answer with something that the band has done specifically or something that you've seen other bands do that's worked really well. So whoever wants to start.
I'd say the biggest change is that it's constant. It's not like, okay, you release a full album, promote the shit out of it, and do a tour. It's like you're posting every day. You're releasing singles, then you're posting about the singles until you post the next single, and then you're posting about that until you release the album. It's just it's a
You
constant.
live with it, yeah.
Yeah. And Marty's been amazing at running the ship on the social media and stuff. Yeah, I think you can't really talk about streaming without kind of tying into the social media aspect of it as well. I think that's probably the biggest thing. You see a lot of artists veering more towards the single model than an album. It's less frequent.
Yeah.
I mean, albums certainly do still come out, but even this past year, you've seen with artists, huge artists that have released full albums, and people will kind of raise their eyebrows at that. It's a lot more popular, or becoming more popular, to just do one-offs.
Yeah, and a lot of it's cost-driven because it economically makes a lot more sense for us. It would have made a lot more sense for us to take these 8 songs and turn them into 4 A and B side singles, because then you can spread them out over 4 months or 4 quarters, and you get more
Right,
play
you,
out of it because
extend the cycle.
yeah, exactly. And it's like once the conversation gets cold on one single, you do it on another. The way I view it when I'm doing our marketing and looking at what other people do, and I do a lot of that to sort of benchmark us, is I think there's pretty much 2 strategies. There's the strategy Ben described, which is a constant stream of posts, and with that, a lot of releases. And that is sort of built on this idea that the band or the musician or the brand is a lifestyle. So you're seeing, like, there's a guy we follow, he's always posting himself shirtless and, like, talking in bed.
Oh, God,
and I'm like,
who's that?
I'm like, how does this relate to your music? You
Right.
know, I'm seeing more about you kicking it with your friends and in bed than you singing. At least sing me a song when you're there.
Right.
Do something for me. And our approach, which is the other one in my mind, is you just go for quality. And it's, I want to release posts that have really good pictures of us, or really good videos that we've made, or are engaging to the audience that we're appealing to. And I'd rather have, okay, maybe that's once a week, once every 2 weeks, but it gets a lot of engagement. It's high quality. I prefer to release an album because these 8 songs, while all good on their own, the way we have them arranged, I, as a listener, prefer to listen to them in the order that we have them. I think it's a much more pleasing experience. And I do realize there's the pressures to pull into that, like, really produce a lot. Quite frankly, I don't have the time to do that either as a thing. And I think just going with quality and setting your own pace and having your own branding and your own way of speaking and engaging with your audience, that's really what's key.
Absolutely.
Also, at the end of the day, having like the full, we both kind of like the full album model, and it kind of gets to what you were saying at the very beginning when we sat down about creating more of a story. You don't get that as much with a single.
Yeah, agreed.
The story, absolutely. Talk about the aesthetic of the album. I thought the shots that you took for that were really nice, and the album cover speaks a lot about, the larger aesthetic of the band.
So we definitely get criticized a bit for having like an old school sound. I wouldn't say criticized, but we have an old school sound. I listen to old music, you listen to old music, but we also view ourselves as modern, contemporary musicians. And so Ben and I both are into mixology a bit, and I sort of had this idea of like, hey, let's like tap into this whole craft cocktail thing, because that's very much kind of doing what we do. It's looking towards the past and seeing what these cocktail makers in the late 19th century were doing, and let's tap into that.
twist.
Yeah, putting a little twist on it, a little modern twist, and that's kind of what we do. So we went to a bar in Boston called the Hawthorne, one of my favorite bars, and they were kind enough to let us take a bunch of photographs. We went in there one morning with a great photographer, our buddy Liam Noonan, and just took a ton of pictures behind the bar.
It was a
We
shame it was
kinda
the
dressed
morning
up.
too, because the bartender, we were like, could we like use some glasses and like for the picture? And he
Do
was
what you
like,
want,
drink
whatever
whatever you want.
Yeah, have whatever you
But it
want.
was 10
You
a.m.
had the place
so-
to yourself.
Yeah, it was
But
nice.
oh no!
Well, no, so we
he
did
made
it.
it almost an open bar for you guys.
Yeah.
and it
We
was
could
just
have.
They were
We
so
should have.
good
We
to
should have
us.
done that at night.
They were so good to
no
us.
shame.
No, they're good people. Our friends over. If you're in Boston, go to the Hawthorne. It's a great bar.
Sweet. Okay, so I think my very last question for you guys is kind of one short-term goal and one long-term goal. So I guess one of you can pick one, and then the other one will be left with the other and have more time to think about the answer.
Do you want more time? You can do whatever you want. You choose.
I'll do long term.
Okay, I'll do short term.
Okay.
Short term, it's been a goal of mine for a couple years, and I'm hoping with Old Familiar Way and with all the exposure we're getting from you, quite frankly, that we can play a real music festival this summer. We play a lot of beer festivals, and those are great. We love doing them. But to play like a festival that is purely a music festival is one of my short-term goals. I would love that.
Sweet. Let's go for it.
All right, long term.
So
Yeah,
that
I'm
leaves you
with
with
that.
long
Let's start
term,
to hear
Ben.
this, Yeah.
The Far Sight.
I guess it's not that long term, but I'm looking to the next album. I've been kind of started writing some songs again, and I'm just excited to kind of do what we did. I want our next album to be with this album. I want the next album to be to Old Familiar Way as Old Familiar Way was to Live, which is say I want to make it bigger, I want to make it better. I don't know how we're going to make it bigger yet, but we'll figure out a way.
We're going to do it.
And that's kind of the next long-term goal is another album that shows how we'll have grown in that time.
Sweet. I think those are two really good goals to go for and super attainable. And that kind of wraps things up. I thank you guys very much for coming out to
Thanks
do
for having
this.
us.
And I really
Finally happened.
appreciate it. So I'm going to be linking all their music. This was the new Rockwells interview. Go check out their new album, Old Familiar Way. It's on all the streaming platforms right now. And Ben and Marty, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, man.
Thanks. It was great.
They bet I got the remedies. Oh, girl, love my melodies. And now she want that melody. Hit the dash, diamond splash, see the flash. My nigga, teach a lesson, leave him guessing out. Class them quicker. In my bag, in my craft, made a path on niggas. If you ask me what's my task, I'ma snap on niggas.
niggas hate.